you wanna know is secret.
Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Calvin from the Tech Feed, and welcome to another episode of the Coding of the Interwebs. And today I'm going to be showing you guys another use for functions called recursion. So last episode I taught you guys about functions. So functions were cool because you could do because if you need to run a block of code, like for example, you needed a variable, for example, int. I'm not int. I'm thinking about a different language. So if you wanted to do a variable, for example, a number, and we'll just set this equal to 1. Okay. So for example, so we have this $num, which is a variable, and it's set to 1. So then you wanted to echo the variable, and then you wanted, so for example, if you wanted to echo out, actually you can, so if you want to echo out num, and then you wanted to do $num plus 1, well, $num plus equals. So usually this plus equals, what this means is that usually when you do, if you want to say this variable number plus 1, if you want to add 1 to it, you need to do num equals num plus 1, which says that, just like how here we're saying num should be 1, what that says is num should be what num currently is plus 1. But if you do this, it does the same thing, just inside of this one little block of code, which is way more neat. So when we refresh this, you see we get 1, and then if we want to, for example, if you want to echo it again, if you want to echo num again, so like this, if you want to echo it out again, and now it'll return 2. So this is cool and all, but if suppose we want to execute this block of code multiple times inside of our program, now the simple solution would be to just run around copying and pasting it everywhere. So here I want to do it, here I want to do it, here I want to do it, you know, just copy and paste it everywhere. But that isn't really neat, right? So what we can do is instead, and so that isn't neat. Well, actually, you know what? And that's kind of also useless. So to give you more of a use case, we will not be setting num again. So you want to echo out the number, and then you want to add 1 to it each time when you do this, right? So that's cool, but you know, this will do it, and this will work if you really wanted to. I mean, this will work. It prints out 1, 2, 3, 4. But as you can see, if I open up watermelon.php, which is the name of our amazing file, you should go back and watch the other videos, and if you're lost and how it's opening up here and stuff, you should go watch the previous videos. I can't talk right now. So that's cool and all, but we want to execute this multiple times. So how do we do that? So it's pretty simple. We can use something called a function. So we can do function, and then we do well, I didn't teach you about these keywords, so don't worry about them. So just function, and you give it a name. And if you're wondering why it auto-completed so easily, get the text editor Adam. I covered that inside the first episode of the series. And so function name. So here we'll call it add num. Okay. And you cannot have spaces inside this name, as I told you before, and you know all the usual stuff. And here we'd put in that block of code that we wanted to do, right? But here we don't need. But I already taught you guys how to do stuff like that, so that's not different. If you want to know how to do that, go back and watch the previous tutorial. But today we're going to be learning about recursion, which is really awesome. So it's a really powerful thing which lets you accomplish a really powerful stuff in no time. But here's the thing. Recursion is really easy to understand if you use other if you have the goal in mind that you want to do that's fit for it. So the way recursion works is that you have a function and it calls itself inside of the function, and that's kind of confusing because if I made a function hello and I called and inside of it echoes out hello and then it calls hello again, what it will do is I'll create an infinite cycle, which could be what you want, but it also couldn't be, because the way that what happens inside to make a good, actually useful recursive function, you have to do these things. So I will do this. So basically it has to have so number one, you have to make it with having an endpoint, which is one of the things which many things don't do. You have to have an endpoint, which means that when the function is passed some variable, it will return something and then it will just exit the function. It won't call itself again, which is something that you don't want it to do, because you don't want it to go around forever, because that won't be useful. Next, you want to be able to next it has to call itself and pass it so you need to be able to pass it a value, right? That's how you make a useful one. So today we're going to be making one that does factorials. Now, when you think about factorials, if you ask what 5 factorial is, 5 factorial is 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, right? That's what 5 factorial is. Or, in other words, it's 5 times 4 factorial, right? So 5 times 4 factorial. And then what is 4 factorial? Well, 4 factorial is 4 times 3 factorial, and so on and so forth, right? Until you get to what is 1 factorial, right? So 1 factorial is just equal to 1, right? 1 factorial is equal to 1. So we're going to be using this principle, and as you figured out, we're going to be passing what number we want the factorial of. So this number here, or this number here, or this number here. And then our endpoint will be when we hit 1 as the value that's passed, and we'll just return straight up 1. So now let's create our function. I'll leave these comments here so that we can reference them throughout the video. So function, so we'll ignore the public keyword. So here we don't want to pass $sign value, because that's not a good name, and when you're working with programming languages you want good names so it's readable and you can read it later. So what you need to do here is we want to pass the fact, we'll just call it the fact, it's a number that we want to get the factorial of. And then here we want our name of the function, so here we want to call it factorial. And if you're wondering why most of the time when I write names, it's I usually make the first letter lowercase, and then any words after that I start up, they're always uppercase. It's not because I forgot to capitalize the first letter, it's just because that's how I learned to code. It's, you know, it's user preference, you know, whatever. And we want the factorial of some and we're going to be passing in what number we want the factorial of. So basically we want to put an if statement in here. In fact, we want an if else. So if we are passed if we get passed in 1, then we return, then what we do is return 1. Well, return 1, right? Semicolon. Well, not if 1. Well, if $fact equals 1. So if we're asked the factorial of 1, we return 1. And at this point, when you return inside a function, if you call return, it will exit the function and it will return the value, whatever value you gave it, and the rest of the code won't even execute. Now, if we aren't given what's the factorial of 1, then this else block runs, and inside of here we want to call we want to return $fact times times the factorial of, we want to return fact times the factorial of fact minus 1, right? Minus 1, right? So what this will do is you pass in a value which will be stored as $fact. If it's 1, it will give you 1, and then it will return, then it will look here. If it's 1, it will return 1, and it will exit the function. Otherwise, it will give you fact times factorial of fact minus 1. Now, how will this work? So basically, when you pass in a value, for example 5, and we need the, so for example, you pass in a value 5. So what it will do is it will go here, well, 5 times 4 factorial is what I need. And then when it evaluates 4 factorial, it's like I need 4 times 3 factorial. When it tries to get 3 factorial, it says I need 3 times 2 factorial. And when I try to get 2 factorial, I go 2 times 1 factorial, and then I get 1. So 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 is the way that it evaluates. So if we go here and we refresh, we'll see that we got no errors, and the reason why we aren't printing anything on the screen just yet is because we didn't tell it to. So what you want to do in order to get it to print is we'll do, well, not inside the function. So what we're going to do is we're going to do echo, and we're going to echo out the factorial of, let's say 5, okay, because that's the example I've been giving throughout this video. And then when we do this, the factorial of 5 is 1. Oh, yes, here you go. So you see, this is a common mistake. I meant to talk about this inside of this video too, and I accidentally made it myself. So this is a common mistake. Inside of PHP and in most other C syntax languages, and what that means is that any language that shares the same kind of syntax, which is the way of writing the code, as C, which is another programming language, and PHP falls inside that category. When you do if means to, when you do if you just put in 1 equal sign, it will set $fact to 1. It won't try to say is fact equal to 1. It will instead say that set fact to 1. So we want to do is fact equal to 1, so you need 2 equal signs, which is why we got returned 1 right here, and then it just executes the code inside of this if statement and never goes to else. So there's our problem. So now when we refresh this, we get 120. And if you check here, pro tip, if you check what is 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, and you do equals, well, something like that. I'll have to go check again what that was. But here we got 120, so that's what the factorial of 5 is. And as you saw, we did this inside this small block of code. We wrote a function using recursion that would give us the factorial. Now this would, without recursion, be really complex to write. So this would be really hard to write without recursion, because then you need to do loops and like crazy long loops, and it would be really complex. Well, the simple function with recursion, which calls itself, it's a breeze. It's actually really simple. So, and I can chain this value to anything. For example, I can do 10, and here, look at this. 5 factorial is 120. 10 factorial is this large number. Factorials grow fast. So I'm not going to evaluate what 10 factorial is, but you get that it works. If I do 3 factorial, you know, something simple like 3 factorial, it will give me 6. So that's pretty easy to evaluate. 3 times 2, which is 6, times 1, which is 6. So, you know, it easily evaluates what the factorials are in no time, and using this simple, super simple function that we wrote. So that's all I'm going to put inside of this video, guys. I think it's getting a little bit long, but I hope this helps, and this is the beginnings of PHP. So we haven't even gotten our feet wet yet. Well, we just got our feet wet. PHP is really powerful, but next time I think I'm going to be covering JavaScript, because JavaScript is also powerful, and they each have their own use cases. JavaScript, in my opinion, is better for those cool effects that you want to do, and then PHP is better for things like form evaluation and, you know, things inside the back end, you know, talking to databases and, you know, that kind of stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and until next time, never ever cut the feed of tech.